This video will demonstrate the process for changing the oil filter, fuel filter, air filter, and spark plugs on this 42-inch deck Craftsman lawn tractor. Bought this kit from Amazon for my Craftsman riding lawnmower. Came with a fuel filter, 2 spark plugs, air filter, and an oil filter. So I'm going to go ahead and replace these items. First thing we want to do is make sure the parking brake is engaged and that the PTO flywheel is off. Another thing I like to do for safety's sake is make sure the spark plugs are disconnected. So there's one spark plug, and then we'll go around to the other side. And we'll move the second spark plug wire. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to start by replacing the spark plug on the right side of the machine when you're looking at it head on. I just have a regular socket with a spark plug wrench on it. It's just a deep wrench. It's a 5/8 inch. It fits right on the spark plug that's in there. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove that. So I got the old spark plug out. I just set it there for now. Got the new spark plug here. I'm just going to start by trying to hand tighten it in there, get it started. Then I'll use the spark plug socket to tighten it down. So I tightened about as far as I could by hand, and now I'm just using the socket to finish it off. Now it's getting tight. So I don't want to over tighten this. I don't want to put too much pressure on it, so I think that's probably good. For now, I'm going to leave the spark plug wires off, just because I want to change the oil and I don't want those plugged in when I'm doing that. I'm going to go ahead and change the spark plug on the other side as well. It's the same process. Just remove the spark plug wire, use your spark plug socket, get it loose, take out the old one, put in the new one. So to replace the air filter, it just had these clips that I just flipped open. They should lift off now. Yep, so there's the old air filter. Looks like it has that green sleeve on it, so like here's the new one. So I just need to take this green sleeve, I think put it on the outside so it looks just like the one that's in there. And this old one just lifts right off. So here's the new one. I just put the green sleeve around the outside of it, and it's just going to go right where the old one was at. This closed in side of it needs to go on top. The open end goes right over there. So we'll just slip that right on there. Alright. Snug fit, fits right on there. I'll move this old one, and we'll just put the cover back on. And I should just be able to close these up. Push down on it while you close those. Alright, so next on the list, I want to replace this gas filter. You can see this tube's coming right from the gas tank over here, and I believe this one's going down to the motor. So basically what you do is you just put a pair of pliers on these clips, clamp the pliers shut, and these clips should open up, and then you can pull that tube off. Do that with both ends. I just put this here just in case any gas spills out while I'm trying to do this. And then here's the new one. This new one is quite a bit bigger than the older one, but it doesn't look like it will interfere with anything. So you can see I've used the pliers to move those clamps down the tubes a little bit. So now I should be able to just pull the tubes off the old filter and then replace it with the new one. One thing that I forgot to point out with this new filter, it's got an arrow on it. So that's the direction you want the gas to flow. So I want the arrow pointing towards the engine, and you can just kind of see it there. make sure that's going in the right direction. All right, so old filter's off, new filter's on. Put the clamps back in place on both sides. One thing I would recommend having ready is maybe like just a big fat flat screwdriver, just to kind of help pry the tubes off of the filter. That helped a little bit to get those off. The other thing is my gas tank, I don't know if you can see that, it's about to here. When I took this hose off, I took this one off first. Fuel did start pouring out of there, so I just kind of raised it up as high as I could go to keep it from coming out of there. So it might be something better to do on an empty tank. I thought it was low enough that I could pull this off without spilling much gas, but I did get a little bit of gas out of there. Just kind of quickly put the new one on, and then as quick as I could. Then it all got caught in that bucket that I had up there, but just something to keep in mind. All right, so now we're going to go on to changing the oil. So I've placed some papers under the oil filter. This black thing here is the old oil filter. Just put some newspapers under there to catch a little bit of oil. Before I pull that off, I'm going to drain all the oil out that I can, so not too much oil should come from there. Here is the new oil filter I'll be putting on. Then I got a filter wrench that helped take the old one off. Before I drop the old oil, I'm going to go ahead and pull the dipstick out. And then I'll put that in the bucket over here. You can see on this side, I also put papers down, and I got my oil catcher here. To get to the oil, it's a little bit of a challenge. See that yellow thing here and this black thing? We're going to hook this tube up to that. What we're going to do is we're going to take that black cap off, we're going to put the tube on there, and then we're going to turn it a quarter of a turn counterclockwise and pull it straight out just a little bit, and then that should release the oil. Alright, so now you can see I removed that black cap. I just pushed this clear tube on there, and this tube came with my mower. I'm not sure the exact size on that. I'm sure you could find one at any hardware store if you needed to find one. So now I'm just going to turn this tube a quarter of a turn, and then I'm going to pull out on it just a little bit. And so you can see the oil starting to come through the tube now. It's coming out and it's starting to drain into my catchment. Alright, so we'll let this drain out. One thing that would be ideal here is if you ran the mower for a few minutes just to warm up the oil. That's going to help it come out a little bit easier. So just remember to do that before you start draining the oil. Things I like to do when I'm letting the oil drain out and waiting on that is just to check the tire pressure. All my tires are a little bit low, so I'm going to go ahead and fill this up with just this little kick pump here. The owner's manual says you want 14 psi in the front and 10 in the rear tires. So go ahead, check your tires while you're waiting for that oil to come out, and make sure they're inflated correctly. Again, that's 14 in the front, 10 in the rear. Now that the oil is pretty much drained on the other side, I'm going to go ahead and remove this old oil filter. So here we go with removing the old oil filter. We're going to go counterclockwise. Alright, so I went ahead and put two hands on the wrench there for a little bit just to get it loosened up, and now I can unscrew it by hand. Again, we're going counterclockwise with this, and there shouldn't be too much oil that comes out of here. It looks like I'm getting a little down there. So I'm going to tilt that up, and I'll clean up that oil that's coming out of there. Here's the old one. And before we put the new filter on, one thing you want to do is just take a little bit of that old oil and go around the gasket there. Make sure you got that gasket covered with oil so it seals nice and tight. I noticed is the old oil filter, the seal for it was actually still on here. So I've removed that. You want to make sure you don't end up having two seals on there, because that's not going to seal right if you do that. You only want one seal. The new filter comes with one. I've already put oil on the new filter just around the seal. That'll help seal it up tight. We're gonna get this about as hand tight as I can, and then I'll just crank on it with the oil wrench. All right, so I got the new filter on. I used both hands to tighten it up as tight as I could, and then I used that filter wrench just to give it a little bit more. You don't want to get them on too tight, and using a filter wrench, you can also crush it if you're trying too hard. But I just got it a little more than hand tight. All right, so now we're back to the other side of the mower where the oil's basically drained out, just kind of dripping out a little bit now. So I'm gonna go ahead and push this back in, just straight in, and then we're gonna turn it to the right. Should turn about a quarter turn. I do it just a couple more times with the tube, and the tube will start to slip, but that yellow knob inside needs to turn about a quarter turn, and that should shut it off. The rest of this that's just dripping out of here is just what was left in the tube. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that tube straight out kind of as I turn it to the right, because I want to make sure that I don't accidentally turn that yellow knob to the left, because that opens up the oil again. And you got to put this black cap back on the yellow knob there. Make sure it's on there firmly. Okay. So this engine's, it's a Kohler engine. It's supposed to hold about 2 quarts. So I've gone ahead and put a funnel up there. I'm gonna start slow. Maybe I'll start with a quart and then check how full it is. I used an SAE 10W30 just for the weather that I normally mow in. That's the appropriate oil to use. And I started slowly. I started with a quart, and then I put in about another half a quart, and then about another quarter of a quart, and just kind of slowly after that. Each time I did that, I checked the dipstick to make sure where the oil level is at, and I waited a few minutes after I put the oil in to check it. And so you just want to make sure that at the top of that second hole there. So just kind of take it slow on putting the new oil back in so you don't overfill it. If you do, it's not a big deal. You can see I left my newspapers in place so that if I did overfill it, as well as my catchment container, if I did overfill it, I could just drain a little bit of oil back out. Luckily I didn't have to do that. One last thing I almost forgot, make sure when you're ready and you're all done with everything, put the spark plug wires back on the spark plugs on both sides. Also, one more thing I like to do, especially before winter time, is my tank's a little less than half full here. So I'm gonna go ahead and top that off. I'll make sure there's fuel stabilizer in the gas that I put in there. If you don't already have that in there, before you top it off with gas, make sure you got fuel stabilizer in that gas, and then maybe run it for a little while to make sure that all the fuel going into the motor has that fuel stabilizer in it, so it doesn't get all gummed up. I hope this video helps with the annual maintenance on your mower. Have a good one.